I'll start that again since I was not unmuted. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Court Reporters Board. I have a few housekeeping matters to share before I call the meeting to order. Beginning with a reminder to everyone that this meeting is being recorded and webcast. Today's meeting will be run in accordance with the Open Meeting Act as required by law. I would ask all of us to please turn our cell phones to silent. You may notice board members accessing their laptops, phones, or other devices during the meeting. They are using the devices solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. To better assist the board in accurately transcribing the minutes of the meeting, members of the public who make a comment may be asked to disclose their name and association. However, disclosure of that information is not required by law and is purely voluntary. I want to remind all speakers to please stay on topic and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If you agree with the prior speaker, please do not repeat the comments, but rather state that you agree with comments already made. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Bruning please call the roll.
Thank you. Ms. Sunkes?
Present.
Ms. Hurt?
Present.
Ms. Brewer?
Present.
Mr. Manayan?
Present.
Mr. Gade?
Present.
Quorum reached.
Thank you. Our first agenda, our first agenda item, number 1, is public comments for items not on the agenda. Before we invite speakers to begin, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss pending complaints, pending applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the board members that is outside of the record, which is in violation of the Administration Procedure Act. Therefore, such discussions could create a conflict and lead to a board decision being challenged in Superior Court. The board can receive comments regarding the board's processes in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific case circumstances where the decision is still pending. Board staff is available to speak with you about any pending matter. In addition, the board would ask that the public address the board as a whole and not individual board members. Please be aware that public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the board members and is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action board members can take is to listen to comments and decide whether they want a future agenda item on the topic. No other action can be taken on the item at this meeting. Though this may seem at times like the board members are not being responsive, following these guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. With that, is there anyone wishing to make public comment?
This is the moderator. We are now accepting public comment on items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We call on people in the order we have requests. And we have a request from Misty Clapper. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 3 minutes and a 30-second warning.
Can I be heard? Can I be heard?
Yes,
Welcome,
go ahead, please.
Misty,
Hello. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to, as a reminder, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you choose, please identify yourself and your association for the record. And I want to say welcome.
Well, thank you so very much. Looks like I have to plug my computer in real quick. It says battery low. My name is Misty Clapper, and my number is 14419, and I'm stalling so I can plug in, and hopefully I don't use up my 3 minutes. Okay, so I have the board regarding an issue of a statement that was made in a newsletter regarding expedited copy fees. And I have gone back and forth and was told that there was a new lawyer that was hired and was going to review this. My last response from the board was June 20th, 2022. So we're now at approximately 6 months. And the issue is that I'd like to put on the agenda that if a copy sale attorney orders an expedited, then you have to give everybody an expedited transcript at no additional fee. I've had this matter reviewed by several lawyers and a federal judge, and according to them, it was in the code. The CCP section was all incorrectly, incorrectly viewed by the prior lawyers. And so I'd like to have this as an agenda because we would no longer be impartial if one side orders an expedited and has to pay extra money for it, and the other side gets it without paying any extra money for an expedite. And that is the issue that I'd like to put on the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Clapper, for sharing that information with the board. Is there anyone else that would like to provide public comment to the board?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Thank you very much. Then let's move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the July 15, 2022 meeting minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the board?
I'd like to move approval.
Was that Davina?
Yes, Hurt.
I'm sorry. Board member Hurt, co-chair Hurt. Thank you. Anyone else with additions or corrections? We have a motion by Ms. Board Member Hurt to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on the minutes?
This is the moderator. We are open for public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the motion?
Yes, please. Ms. Bruning, would you please call the roll to vote on this item?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Brewer?
Abstain. I was not present.
Thank you. Ms. Hurt?
Aye.
Mr. Manayan?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Degare?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Sunkis?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. And we'll turn to the next agenda item, number 3. I would like to welcome Daryl Holloway, legislative analyst with the Division of Legislative Affairs at the Department of Consumer Affairs, to give the report.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Daryl Holloway. I'm from the Division of Legislative Affairs at the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I'm here to give you the DCA update. I just wanted to say thanks for allowing me to have an opportunity to provide this update for you today. The first topic is new DCA staff. We are very excited to announce that the governor has recently appointed leaders to the DCA Board and Bureau Relations team. Melissa Gear is serving as DCA's new Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, and she has joined the department on October 3rd. On November 14th, Yvonne Durentes has began serving as the new Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. She previously served as the Senior Emergency Services Coordinator at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services since 2022, and a Policy Analyst and Task Force Coordinator since 2019. She was an Executive Fellow at Cal OES from 2018 to 2019. We are very excited to have this new Board and Bureau Relations team in place to serve and assist with our boards and bureaus. We are also pleased to announce the appointment of Kathleen Nichols as Chief of the Division of Investigation. She will be sworn in on December 5th. Ms. Nichols has extensive law enforcement experience with over 26 years investigating and supervising experience. Sorry, let me jump back there. Has extensive law enforcement experience with over 26 years investigating and supervisory experience. Her experience will assist in bringing consistency between the units within the division. The department will begin the process to fill the deputy chief position in the Health Quality Investigation Unit as soon as possible. Please help us welcome Ms. Nichols to her new role. DCA Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion Steering Committee. Director Kimberly Kirschmeyer established the department's first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee to guide the department in its equity strategy initiatives and action plans. The DEI committee held its official kickoff meeting on November 9th and will convene its second meeting in January 2023. The committee will focus on 3 core areas: workforce, recruit and retain diverse talent; workplace, actively educate leadership and staff to increase awareness and create an inclusive culture; and marketplace, serve consumers, applicants, and licensees with sensitivity to their diverse backgrounds and perspectives. Strategic planning. In accordance with Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order, strategic plans in effect July 2023 and beyond must be developed or updated to more effectively advance equity and drive outcomes that increase opportunity for all. In response, DCA is revising its strategic planning process to incorporate more inclusive public engagement, data analysis, and embedded diversity, equity, and inclusion into the strategic planning process. Over the coming months, the DEI committee will inform the strategic planning process. By March 2023, DCA will begin implementing the revised processes and working with the boards in updating existing strategic plans or developing new strategic plans. New strategic plan and logo. On December 2nd, 2022, DCA released its 2022 through 2027 strategic plan. Additionally, with the unveiling of the new strategic plan, the department also releases a new logo. This new plan and logo represent the next chapter and future in the department. Director Kirschmeyer stated, quote, "Consumer protection continues to guide our mission and priorities. Our department holds itself to a high standard in providing outstanding support services, oversight, and innovative solutions to those who can regulate California's professions and vocations, so that, through this partnership, all Californians are informed, empowered, and protected. The department's strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as our shared dedication to each and every consumer, is built into this framework of the plan." end quote. The new logo is very representative of DCA. The shield represents the department's strong and long-standing protection mandate. The state represents all 40 million Californians DCA has pledged and are honored to serve. The star represents the consumer protection as DCA's true guiding principle, the department's own North Star. The Office of Public Affairs will be providing more information in the coming weeks on the implementation of the new logo. The Our Promise campaign. DCA is excited to take part in the annual Our Promise, California State Employees Giving at Work campaign, and celebrate 65 years of caring for California board members. Caring for California board members should have received an email this week from DCA Our Promise co-chairs, Chief Deputy Director Christine Lawley and me. Not me, I believe that's Kimberly Kirschmeyer, with information on how to give. The campaign allows Californians to donate to a nonprofit or nonprofits of their choice through December. With your assistance, DCA hopes to continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities through this year's campaign. Please assist us in encouraging all members and staff to donate. Please contact Melissa Gear if you have any questions or can assist. Board member travel. As travel resumes again, it's important to remember that all state travel arrangements must be made through DCA's approved travel agency, Cal Travel Store, or Concours. All board members and staff must use the most economical fares possible when traveling by air on official state business. Typically, this will be Southwest's Wanna Get Away option. However, there may be additional charges if changes are made to the flight. Flight changes to date and time for personal convenience are not approved or justified reasons, and the traveler will be responsible for any associated charges. If you have any questions, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. Required board member training reminder. As 2022 comes to a close, it's a perfect time to make sure you have completed all your required board member training and submitted your certificates of completion to your executive officer and DCA at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. Board members are required to complete board member orientation training, or BMOT, within the first year of appointment or reappointment. Ethics training within 6 months of appointment and repeat every 2 years. Sexual harassment prevention within the first year and every 2 years, and defensive driver training within the first year and every 4 years. These trainings are offered multiple times a year in various formats for your convenience. If you have any questions or need additional information about any of these trainings or anything else, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. Partnership with the State Controller's Office. DCA is partnering with the State Controller's Office to share information with consumers and certain licensees about the Unclaimed Property Program. State law requires banks, insurance companies, corporations, and other entities to report and submit their customers' property to the State Controller's Office after a period of inactivity, generally 3 years. Many DCA licensees will benefit from this partnership, as it will educate them about their responsibility to report unclaimed property and assist with compliance. Additionally, the program is a great resource for all consumers to locate their unclaimed property. Thank you again for this opportunity. DCA and the Board and Bureau Relations team look forward to working and assisting you. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation.
I think that our board chair may be having technological issues. I saw her freeze on the screen. We'll check.
Okay, got it.
As vice chair, I can definitely jump in if necessary. Maybe the chair wants to cut our video off. Oh, there we go. So maybe, Ms. Finner, would you like me to call for public comments on this item?
I think you should. Go ahead.
Okay, if we could now take public comments on agenda item 3, which was the Department of Consumer Affairs update.
We are now taking public comment on the DCA update. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, return to the agenda.
Perfect. Okay, I will continue on to agenda item 4, which is the report of the executive officer. Over to you, Ms. Finner.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Hurt. I'm going to start off my report with a review of the budget. On page 20 of the board meeting materials, you'll see the expenditure projections for fiscal month 3. As you all know, that's pretty early into the fiscal year for it to be, I don't want to say it's not meaningful, but it's very early on. So there'll be lots of adjustments as we move in and the expenditures hit the actual report. Does anyone have any questions on the expenditures?
I have one question, Vice Chair Hurt. Are there going to be any cost increase with the test vendors? Are we aware of that? I mean, that's basically much of the cost of our budget.
So the contracts with Real-Time Coach, which is our vendor for our skills test, was I believe a 2-year contract, and so that those will not change. And I believe this particular expenditure report reflects the changes with PSI, and they're the vendor that does our written tests.
Thank you. That's all for me. And
Okay.
I see our chair's back, so I'll hand it back over to Chair Sunkis.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
You know, I said that people have said that so many times with, since we've been doing remote, that I have a brief for that, writing that in court. So I apologize for the connection issues. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hurt.
So, Chair Sunkis, before I move on to the fund condition, did you have any questions on the expenditure projections on page 20?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Then moving on to page 21, you'll find the overall fund condition. If you go down to our months in reserve, you can see that we're very stable going out into the future. But I'm happy to answer any questions on the overall fund condition if board members have questions. No questions? Okay. In that case, as we move to the transcript reimbursement fund, I'll turn it over to Paula Bruning to give us an update on all things TRF.
Good morning and thank you. We continue to receive a lot of applications from pro per litigants. The amount of applications coming in from pro bono has basically leveled off, but we are getting a lot of inquiries and applications from the pro bono or pro per side. If there are any questions from the board, I'd be happy to answer anything. If you have specific questions.
Ms. Hurt?
Davina?
Just a real quick one. We don't have a waiting list, correct, of applicants?
I'm not sure what you mean by a waiting list.
There's enough money to go around for those who are putting forth applications.
Yes, we have plenty of funding. We just have applications in the queue for review.
I've been on the board for a while, so I know we've had ups and downs, and that's a really important question to just make sure we can keep processing applications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Ms. Bruning, for all of your hard work in administering the entirety of this important fund. As you know, Paula has had the pleasure of processing all of the applications with staff reorganization that has helped, has happened. So big shout out to her for taking on the entire fund. Moving on to the enforcement statistics. You can see the statistics for the period of July 1, 2022 through October 31st of 2022 on pages 23 and 24. The data that you have before you includes complaints against licensees as well as firms. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the enforcement statistics.
Ms. Hurd?
Just a couple of really quick ones. Are there any trends with the complaints you're receiving?
I wouldn't say trends necessarily because of the changes with the firm registration, and then with the passage of the bill that included voice writing and the title protection, we are starting to get new complaints, new types of complaints, but it's too early really to have any kind of trend information.
Thank you. And I just wanted to note that we have 0 AG enforcement actions, which is always a pleasure to see. Do you think, is that unusual at this time period or?
So that's a little bit difficult because we can never really predict what type of complaints we're going to get. And we can't really predict the pathway of those complaints. Sometimes they're easily resolved. Sometimes we can negotiate a settlement before we have to send it on to the AG. It just really depends on the individual complaint. It makes it difficult for budgeting because we don't even know how many we're going to get and how serious they're going to be. I can tell you that I have heard across DCA wide, the number of complaints that are rising to the level of the AG's office is trending down. So we are clearly part of that trending down right now. I don't have an explanation for why. It just is what it is.
Hopefully that's a good sign and I'll take it as a win. So thank you.
If there aren't any other questions on the enforcement statistics, then I will direct you to page 25 for the results of our license exam.
Ms. Fenner, before you go on, I see another hand. Ms. Brewer, did you have your hand raised?
I did. I had taken it down because I just a question in passing, and I'm sorry to just mention this now, but so on the first line where we have the received complaints July through October, that seems a little higher to me than what we've seen in the last couple of meetings. And just, you know, of course you have no control over what complaints are received, but any idea about why that would be?
I would think it's just the change in the law with the firm registration. So there's a new category of complaints, if you will, that are coming in. Did I miss anyone else?
I'm not seeing any other hands.
Okay. Then going back to the exam results, you can see the dictation exam results starting on page 25. I would just update the board that we had 81 candidates take the skills exam for the testing cycle that was open from November 1st through November 22nd. Of that 81, 38 were first timers. Does anyone have questions on just the skills exam?
I'm not seeing any hands.
And I just received a correction from our licensing analyst. It was 28 on the first timers. Sorry about that. Moving on to the two written portions of the exam, the English and the professional practice. You'll see the results of those on pages 27 through 30. And I'm happy to answer any questions on the results of that if anyone has questions.
I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I misheard.
Thanks. Sorry, I was slow to reach the button. On the English exams, are there any trends or barriers right now when it comes to the passage of the exams? Do you have any facts or details around how maybe non-English speakers are dealing with the English exam?
So unfortunately, I think it's a little bit, we're a unique industry in that we are reporting in English and we're creating transcripts in English. And so you need a pretty high level and proficiency in the English language in order to be successful as a court reporter. So our particular occupation isn't as friendly to non-English speakers. We have many bilingual court reporters, so it's absolutely possible. And it just is a fact of life with our occupation that you need those higher English skills.
Maybe when we get to the strategic planning portion, that's a discussion we can have, if not in this meeting, in the strategic meeting, about how to help more non-English speakers, and as you said, folks who speak several languages, to do better in the exam and make sure that we don't have barriers when it comes to the exam taking. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Tagade, did you have a question? I see your hand raised.
I did, and I was curious. I believe this is the first round of exams where we're going to see our voice writers represented. Is that correct? I was curious if we had any statistics on our voice writers and how they performed, and if we have any breakout for that subset of folks.
So I'll give you a preview of coming attractions. We'll kind of rearrange. I was going to talk about the voice writers a little bit more under that implementation, but we had, even though the bill was signed, I think on a Wednesday, and the following Monday was our application deadline, we still received 6 applications from voice writers for this particular skills exam. Of those 6, one was unable to upload notes, one was chose not to complete the test, so we had 2 incompletes. So 4 successfully submitted tests. I can tell you that we're at the very end of the grading period, and we will be sending results out shortly. Are there any other questions on the exam?
I am not seeing any other hands raised.
Okay. I'd like to put out an urgent plea for exam development workshop participants. This is really dedicated to the members of the public and to our trade associations who are really supportive of our efforts when we're trying to find subject matter experts to work our exam development workshops. We desperately need reporters to help us with all 4 phases of the exam development process. And so I just would ask that the next time anyone sees a recruitment request for one of our workshops, please seriously consider helping helping us out by attending one. It's really vital to our ability to keep the license exam up to date and relevant. If there are no questions on the exam itself, I want to report on our occupational analysis. Oh, Laura, I see your hand up.
Thank you. A question about the workshops. Are those offered remote? And if so, do we know how long they will be offered remote, or are they only on site at this point?
It depends on the type of the exam workshop. Some of them are well, most of them are in person, but sometimes they are remote. It just depends on the nature of the workshop.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Just as an update on our occupational analysis, which relates to our exams, we had a good amount of responses when we sent out our first round of surveys. Excuse me. But even though it's statistically enough to move forward with, it's a lot fewer than we had on our last occupational analysis. And so the Office of Professional Examination Services asked if they could send out an additional 1,000 random surveys, which we approved. And so the survey window to complete that is going to be extended until January 6th, I believe. That way we'll be able to get additional responses. A big thank you to everyone that has completed that. It's a very comprehensive survey. It's not like when we open a SurveyMonkey survey, sometimes we think we can do it in 30 seconds to a minute. It's not that type of a survey. It's very in depth and requires some time. So I really, really appreciate everyone that's filled that out. In talking with the Office of Professional Examination Services, they wanted me to throw out an idea to the board, and it doesn't have to be solved today. It's just something to consider. They wanted to know if the board would want to combine the two written tests so that instead of 100 English test questions on a separate test and 100 questions on professional practice as a separate test, combining them into one test of 150 questions, and it would contain both the English and the professional practice. And I asked kind of what was the impetus for that suggestion. They're not, suggestion may be too strong. It's just, it's an idea that for the board to consider. And they had some concerns with the pass rate for the English test. And so I shared with them the same information that I shared with Ms. Hurt, that unfortunately, or fortunately, it is what it is, our professional occupation, this particular industry has to require superior English skills because we're reporting in English and we're creating transcripts in English. And without a higher level of grammar and vocabulary, those transcripts really aren't usable. They're of an inferior quality. So I'll just throw that idea out. I don't know if you want to discuss it right now, Madam Chair, or if you want to leave it to strategic planning or a future board meeting. That's up to the board's pleasure.
Since we've got the strategic planning coming up soon, and we'll be getting further results on our occupational analysis, perhaps we get into the meat of that discussion, bring up that, discuss that more fully at that strategic planning and board meeting. But if anyone has any initial thoughts on it, I welcome it. I welcome your comment.
Well,
It-
I have a comment.
I was going to say, it looks like our chair had to go out again. So
Yeah.
Davina, I saw you come up first, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that she opted to move forward with that discussion at strategic planning. I think for me, it's going to be really important to understand the data behind the change and you know, more facts around who's been impacted and how they've been impacted, and just exactly how lowering that threshold, the number of questions, will improve that space. So I just wanted to put that out for those who will be preparing for us to have the discussion and the background. There'll be some things that I would like to understand and know about. And then, since we lost our chair, as vice chair, I'll take over, and I see board member Tagadi's hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that we're going to push this conversation to a more full discussion. I think to Vice Chair Hurt's point, I think that we really do need to have a full discussion of you know, what the data behind that recommendation or that suggestion might be. A question I had, and perhaps Ms. Fenner might be able to respond to this. Is there a financial barrier to having the test separated out? My understanding is that it is not a particularly high financial barrier, but I will defer to you.
I don't see it as a barrier. It's $25 per leg of the test, if you will. The applicant has to apply with a $40 application, and then that fee is good for 3 years. They have 3 years to complete the 3 legs, and then each time they attempt one of the legs, it's $25. I don't see that as a barrier.
Thank you for your question. Let's move to board member Brewer.
Thank you. I likewise look forward to discussing this more fully, especially because I think we need to give a fresh look to everything that could possibly affect how many new licensees we have coming in, but also the quality of the licensees. And I will say anecdotally that I lean towards agreeing with what our executive officer had said. High level of English skills and word knowledge are very important to accurate transcript production. And anecdotally, I see a lot of mistakes, and it's important to remember that mistakes can impact the meaning and affect litigants and parties. So I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So it seems, Ms. Fenner, we want to take a holistic approach at this discussion and look at all aspects and figure out how we can meet people where they are, but realize that English is very important and has to be high level in this industry. I believe I don't see any additional hands raised, and we are on agenda item 4. I'll hand it back over to you, Ms. Fenner.
So if we could take a short break, we're trying to get our chair hardwired back in. My wonderful staff person, Paula Bruning, has pointed out that I skipped our firm registration implementation. So if we could take a 5-minute break, please, while we do some technical troubleshooting with Robin to get her back in.
Okay, sounds good. So folks, we'll take 5-minute break. Actually, why don't we just shoot for 9:55? Folks will be back on. So take a restroom break, and we'll see you back, meeting in recess. Thank you.
I see Ms. Brewer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I certainly can.
Thank you. I am going to stay off video in the hopes that that helps with this connection, my connectivity issues. And I apologize, I missed the end of the discussion on the combining the test, the suggestion from OPES. Although I am getting a message that that Ms. Fenner is going to be discussing firm registration.
And Robin, just so you know, it seemed like the consensus of the board was we would go into the OA recommendation or the OPES recommendation on combining the written at strategic planning and have a more full discussion on that.
Thank you. Before you move on, I had a thought on the surveys that went out.
Do you want to wait and do that in open meeting?
I thought we were back in session.
It says board meeting in recess. I don't think you've called it back to order.
Thank you. So we'll call the meeting back to order. And before we move on, two things. One, back on, and I apologize for my connectivity issues and the problems that's creating today. I wanted to say, going back to the surveys that went out, the additional surveys, that perhaps we use our social media presence to get the word out, spread the word to please. It's important to please respond to those surveys, and perhaps that might be a good use of our social media presence. And I see board member Brewer, her hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add one thing over the break. I had cause to think about it regarding our discussion about the OPES suggestion that we consider their idea of combining the professional practice and English exams. And that is, I am wondering if between now and then we can get any data about whether there are any applicants who are being held back from licensure by inability to pass the English examination. In other words, are there people who pass other parts but for passing the English exam would be able to be licensed? I'd be interested in having that information. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So Ms. Fenner, did you want to go on to the remainder of your report?
Thank you, Chair Sunkees. I did skip the firm registration implementation. I wanted to let the board members know that we currently have 201 registered firms. That does include wholly owned or licensee owned firms. That's an aggregate number. We continue to find firms that are practicing without registering. So as we find them, then we follow up with a letter saying, hey, did you know there's this law passed? Here's your application. Here are the requirements. So I feel like we're slowly wrapping our arms around that pool of businesses that are operating in California. Does anyone have questions on the implementation for the firm registration?
Ms. Brewer?
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Fenner, as you send letters out to these firms, have you had a pretty good response generally?
Yes. I mean, it's the law. So we're not getting people saying, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you for the update, Ms. Fenner. Does that complete the full update?
It does on firm registration unless people have questions. The final portion of my report is on the business modernization efforts, which going forward, we're going to call technology modernization. So if you hear tech mod instead of biz mod, it's basically still the same global concept that will be improving our software and the processes related to that. Our licensing analyst, Kim Kale, has been involved with updating the business processing mapping. We had completed that in anticipation of going forward in cohort 2. And since that time, we added the firm registration and the voice writers. So she's worked with the OIS people and the planning people to update that process. Currently, the California Department of Technology is working on drafting contract documents that will be signed, and then we will hopefully have execution on that in early 2023. Are there any questions on that particular process?
Ms. Hurt?
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank staff for, it's been a long time coming for the tech modernization, and I know you've had to answer a lot of the public as to why is it taking us so long to get to where we are, and you've had to field a lot of calls. And so I just wanted to thank you all for the hard work and really persevering over the years. We finally got to the point now where we're getting this tech modernization. That also includes the online testing, the firm registration, many of these things that we have today. It took many years, and staff has worked really hard to make that happen. So I just wanted to commend them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to piggyback on that and say, I know all the efforts that went into the presentation that was made requesting there was a competitive grant. So Ms. Fenner and staff, thank you so much for all your efforts. I know it was many hours and I'm just talking about just making the presentation and making the pitch and winning that grant. So thank you so much. Any other comments?
You may want to open it up to the public, and then if there are no questions from the public, that would conclude my report, Madam Chair. Ms. Hurt, I don't see Chair Sunkeys. I wonder if you want to call for public comment on the entirety of my report?
Yes, absolutely. So we are again at agenda item 4. We've concluded it. So now it's time for public comments. If you have any comments you'd like to make, you have 3 minutes or less. And we will now open for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on all of agenda item 4. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, I'll take it from here. Thank you very much. Let's now move to agenda item 5, which is legislation. We'll receive a briefing on the current legislation related to court reporting industry and/or the Court Reporters Board with discussion and possible action. Over to you, Ms. Fenner.
Thank you, Co-Chair Hurt. Beginning on page 31 of the board agenda packet, you'll find a list of the bills that we tracked in the last legislative cycle. I'm starting off with AB 156, which was signed by the governor and chaptered on September 27th, 2022. It's a biggie for us because it allows the Court Reporters Board to license voice writers. As I said, even though the application deadline for the November skills test was October 1st, we had 6 voice writers still able to get their applications submitted. So we're in the final recheck stage of grading, and results will be going out pretty soon. It was another case of here's legislation and how quickly can we get this implemented. So I would really like to recognize our licensing analyst, Kim Kale, for the amazing job that she did in getting this particular legislation implemented so quickly. As if the skills test isn't enough of a challenge on its own, let's throw in a whole new method of reporting. In addition to working on the application, she also had to work with our test vendor, Real-Time Coach, and their Proctor subcontractor, ProctorU, to update the Proctor instructions and the equipment lists. All I can say is great work, Kim. Thank you so much. I also want to thank the National Verbatim Reporters Association for their continued support during this process. Linda White is the head of their testing program, was instrumental in helping us get the test up and running. Also, the president of NVRA, Miranda Sullivan West, took the time to test our exam and work with the proctor instructions so that when we went live with the test, we were all ready to go. We have lots of gratitude out there for all of the people that made it happen behind the scenes. The second part of AB 156 that affected the court reporting industry and the board was the addition of some terms that became protected, if you will. The use of stenographer, reporter, court reporter, deposition reporter, or digital reporter are also protected terms like CSR and certified shorthand reporter right now. We hope that the intent of this legislation, which is to clarify for the attorneys and the litigants so that they can be sure that they're getting the services of a licensed court reporter for their deposition or proceeding. Are there any questions on AB 156, either portion of it, the voice writing or the title protection? Seeing none, I would just note that the rest of the bills are in the board packet. Oh, I see Laura.
Thank you. Not a question. I can't let this go by without expressing my incredible gratitude for everybody who got this done. I mean, this is a big step, a long time coming, both of these big milestones in this bill. So thank you to all.
Thank you for that. The rest of the bills are pretty straightforward as far as what happened to them. They're in the board packet. If anybody wants to comment on them, they can. Otherwise, I would just note that we're starting to collect up the bills that are being introduced for this next legislative year. So stay tuned for coming attractions. And that's the conclusion of my legislative report. If you want to, I'll take questions, or if you want to open it up to public comment.
Yeah, thank you. I think I heard that our chair is back. I don't know if she wants me to continue moving forward. I think she's on her phone right now, or if she wanted to take the helm back.
May I ask if you can hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Ms. Hurt, thank you so much for filling in. I hope that you don't have to do it again. I've got my fingers crossed. Is there any public comment on the legislative report?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 5. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. So we will continue on with agenda item 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair, I do have my hand raised. I just have one really quick question, if I could ask Executive Fenner.
Absolutely. And I will just preempt this by saying I cannot see anyone's hand, so please feel free to jump in like Ms. Hurt just did.
Yeah, I figured so. Sorry to interrupt your flow.
Not at all. Thank you.
Since I know you're on the phone, it is hard to see sometimes. Just a really quick question on AB 177. It just came to my mind. I'm wondering, Ms. Finner, if you could do a report out on how we participated in that item and kind of what the future looks like, or at least what stage we are as it relates to the implementation of AB 177.
That was not a bill that we tracked, but it was a bill that we were involved in after the fact. It mandated the creation of a work group with the Judicial Council specifically to explore remote reporting and court reporter supply issues, if you will. So our board chair, Robin Sunkeys, and was appointed as one of the members of the task force. And then I attended the meetings as well, just as a member of the public and to fill in for any time that she wasn't available. The work group met over the summer and completed their report. The report is recommending that the courts move or accept or pursue, I should say, legislation for remote reporting for court proceedings. We'll wait to see what legislation actually finds an author and gets underway before we really comment further on how that will go and how that will affect court reporters. I will tell you that Ms. Sunkeys and I made a presentation on the number of court reporters, what the future looks like. The trend is down. I think that will be immediately turned around with the licensing of voice writers. I think that's going to be a much more successful program for candidates going into training for that particular method because it's based in English. They don't have to learn a completely foreign language. They don't have to learn the steno shorthand. And so I think you'll see higher completion rates in a shorter amount of time. And so we should quickly see an increase with the schools in their enrollment. And then we should see the increase in test candidates coming in for licensure for our test.
Great, thank you. Just really quick, a follow-up. Did we, I don't believe the board has taken an official position, but in that working group, was there a position that we did present as to what we believe the outcome should be based upon all the work that we're doing?
It wasn't set up quite that way. It was more, here are the questions, and then all of the work group members voted. It would be our impression that there are court proceedings that lend themselves to successful remote reporting, and there are some where it would be less successful. There are some things that should happen if they are going to be held remotely. There should be minimum standards as far as equipment and bandwidth in order to ensure that the litigant is going to have a good record. So we'll work on details. As I said, as specific legislation is introduced, then I think there will be ample opportunity for the board to weigh in.
Thank you. I just wanted to get this in the public record because I think it could be a bigger issue and something we really need to think deeply about and what sort of guardrails we need to put on this so that we can continue to fulfill our mission, which is protecting the record. Despite which direction it may go in the future, especially when we think of AI and innovation and technology, the board should be thinking about how the industry will change. Okay, thanks a lot.
And I see Board Member Brewer's hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. I apologize if I missed this, but is this working group expected to meet again and the meetings will be open to the public so that any of us could participate? And if so, I'd be interested in getting that schedule. And then one other thing before you answer that question is, seems to me, given our Vice Chair Hertz comments, that this would be perhaps, depending on the timing, a good thing to add to discussion for our strategic planning meeting this coming spring. Thank you.
So the work group meetings are over with and the report is finished. So that particular endeavor is accomplished. So the next step would be to see what kind of legislation comes from the recommendations to the Judicial Council.
Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, hearing none, I would suggest we move on to agenda item number 6, regulations. 6.1 will be an update by Danny Rogers, our regulations attorney. Ms. Rogers, would you like to give us your report?
Good morning, everyone. This is Danny Rogers, Regulations Counsel for the Court Reporter Board. The first item is item 6.1 relating to section 2450. This related to a fee schedule for firm registration. On September 23rd, 2022, OAL approved the regulation amendments, and the link is provided for your review in the board materials. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to offer comment?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 6. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. We will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Do any board members wish to comment or offer a motion?
There wouldn't be a motion until 6.2.
Thank you. I am not seeing any hands raised from board members. So 6.1 was informational only. So let's move to 6.2, the voice writing skill curriculum regulations. Danny, can you present this item for us, please?
Certainly. This is item 6.2 relating to proposed section 2411 for the voice writing skill curriculum. The passage of AB 156 allowed for the licensure of voice writers in California. The task force met to develop the curriculum for the skills portion of the prescribed course of study for the CSR exam for approval by the full board. The proposed regulation is attached in your materials, and the proposed motion is also included in your materials. We're looking today for your approval of the proposed regulatory text to initiate the rulemaking package. If there's any questions on the text, please let me know.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to offer comment?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 6.2. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, please. Do any board members wish to comment or offer a motion? Ms. Brewer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, in reading through this, had a couple of questions about whether we wanted to amend some language, and I don't know if it would be appropriate to bring up my questions right now or after a motion is made. Okay, so I'll do it now. So it would be helpful if people would follow along on their board packets. So on the text, let's start with page 36 at the very top, the top line, where it says stenographic notes. I was wondering if we need to include voice note files or something that would be more relevant for voice writers because they won't have stenographic notes. Then moving on to page 37, a little past midway at sub-item 1.2, the second paragraph under technology, where it outlines different items that will be taught. And my thinking was that this has a lot of stuff, it doesn't have anything related to understanding audio files or audio setup. I'm not a voice writer, but I imagine that audio and understanding the audio settings and troubleshooting on the computer would be very important for voice writers. So I'm just wondering if we want to consider adding something related to that, to the training. Under subparagraph 3, once again, we have stenographic notes. So I would bring up the thought of adding, as on the previous page, something related to voice writer files. Sub-item 4, the last word, computer. This is kind of picayune, but I would personally change that to device because when we're outputting real time, it's not always to a computer. Sometimes it's some other device. And then item number 5, similarly, stenographic notes. We want to include files that voice writers use. And moving on to page 4. I had a question about grammar on one of these, but that's just so old and fussy. I'm not going to bring it up. Page 40. The final item, J, interactive real time, same comment. Could we change computer to device? Thank you.
And Ms. Brewer, can we go back? Can we go back to your suggestion about on page 37 on tab 2 on number 2? What is it that you would like to add? What are you suggesting to add to that?
Oh, well, okay. So on my notes, I was thinking audio setup, audio settings, or troubleshooting computer audio.
If I could just jump in on this particular section, it's for the written tests. And the direction that I'm working with OPES on is to really take out anything that has to do with equipment specific to voice writers or equipment specific to steno writers, because it's not going to apply to both. I definitely agree. Any place that we're talking about steno notes, it should be stenographic or voice notes. We should make that more inclusive. I will say that the task force only looked at the skills portion. They didn't look at the portion that includes all of the academics, because I told them that the academics wouldn't change, when in fact, as Laurel pointed out, there are places that do need to be corrected. So that's, I think, the regulations that are proposed will be amended to add in where it says the stenographic notes or voice notes would be very appropriate.
Okay, and to address the computer, the two places where you've suggested to put device, I understand what you're saying. It could be a laptop. I mean, it could be an iPad or something like that. I don't know if we want to get that. It's still a type of computer, so I don't know if we want to go to that to make that change. I don't know that that's necessary.
I would defer to Ms. Rogers on that one because my experience with regulations would be the fewer changes that we make, the fewer doors that we open up to anybody that's reviewing it to interpret things differently. But if it's a crucial change, then we should explore making it. But I would really want to hear from Ms. Rogers on what her feelings are on that particular change.
Certainly, this is Danny Rogers again, Regulations Council. I think it's entirely appropriate to change it to device if that reflects the technology that a voice writer is dealing with. I don't think there's any particular problem posed by changing that. I think so long as we can provide a rationale for doing so that's straightforward and clear, then let's do that. We want the regulation text to work for voice writers as well. Just generally, if we're going to make changes to the text today, we should go line by line and be very clear on the record what we're striking and inserting so that we can make a motion that reflects all of the changes that are being made. I'm not sure if we're at that stage right now. If discussion is concluded, but when we are, I can assist with.
I think I've got the notes, and so when you're to that point, let me know, and then I can go through the changes before we make the motion.
Thank you.
And I did see, well, I thought I saw, oh, there it is. Ms. Hurt, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to second Ms. Brewer's comments. I actually was going to make the same suggestion about the voice writing notes to be and or with stenographic notes. So thank you, Board Member Brewer, for that. And then I also, Chair Sunkeys and myself co-chaired this task force. So I definitely wanted to thank Maggie Ortiz, Linda Winfrey, Jocelyn Epperson for their work on this. Ms. Finner, did I forget someone? I think those were all the folks that worked on this. I just wanted to thank all those experts who helped in the subcommittee to formulate what we're seeing before us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for correcting Linda's last name. I think I called her Linda White when I was thanking her before. It is Linda Winfrey. Linda, my apologies.
Any other comments before we get to making the, adding in the additional text? I am seeing nothing from the board. So Ms. Fenner, do you want to walk through those additions?
Sure.
Or Ms. Rogers?
I'm happy to assist with that, Yvonne, if you would like, and you can chime in as necessary.
Okay.
So the first comment that I heard was on page 36 at the top with big C. And it states management of pertinent records, including stenographic notes. So I believe the suggested change was to add voice notes. So I think what we would suggest there is to do including stenographic and/or voice before notes underlined.
Yes.
Correct. Excellent. The next item was on page 37. I believe it was item little I-2. And Yvonne, did I hear you correctly that we did or did not want to include in item 2 the audio setup suggestion?
We would not, because this would be applying to both steno writers and voice writers.
Understood. Okay, so we won't make that change as suggested in little I subdivision 2. The next suggested change was in little I3. The student shall demonstrate the ability to produce a transcript from the student's own stenographic notes, etc. So what I would suggest there is after stenographic, we insert another and/or voice underlined before notes. Okay, by you, Yvonne?
Yes.
Okay. And item little I4, we were going to potentially change computer to device. Did we come to a conclusion on whether to implement that change?
If you don't see a problem with it, then yes, that would make it, I think, clearer.
Excellent. So on little I, item 4, we will strike the word computer at the end of the sentence and insert device underlined before the period. Okay by you?
Yes.
Okay. And little I, item 5, are we also going to add and or voice before notes on that item as well?
Yes.
Okay, done. Let the record reflect that. And then I believe on page 40 was the next reference. Let's see. And I didn't quite catch the location of that edit. Do you have that in your notes, Yvonne? I believe it was computer to device, and I was looking for it. I was finding it quickly.
It's on sub J, lowercase j, on page 40.
Right. Okay, so we will strike computer in subdivision J on page 40 and add device underlined before the period.
Perfect. I think you caught the same ones I did. Thank you.
And any motion that we make should reflect the changes that I've identified in the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the board?
No, but I'm prepared to make a motion. This is Vice Chair Hurd.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd.
I'd like to move to approve the proposed regulatory text for section 2411
As amended.
with the amended changes outlined. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 40-day comment period and no hearing is requested, I'd like to authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulation as amended at section 2411, noticed and amended.
Wow.
Motion. Wow.
That's a mouthful. We have
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hurd. Do we have a second?
Sorry, second, Laura Brewer.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. The motion has been seconded by Ms. Brewer. Ms. Bruning, would you please call the roll?
Matter of order. This is the moderator.
Yes.
I'm not your legal counsel, but I believe you need public comment before you accept a vote.
Do we have any public comment?
We are now accepting public comment on the motion. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take about 15 seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Ms. Bruning, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Brewer?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Hurt.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Manayan.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Gade.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Sunkis.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 7, sunset review. We are gearing up to prepare to undergo our sunset review. Ms. Fenner, will you start us off, please?
Thank you, Chair Sunkis. SB 1443 by Senator Roth extended our board's sunset date to January 1st of 2025. So that's our actual sunset date. So that means that we would be going through our sunset review hearing with the legislature sometime in the spring of 2024. which means that our sunset review report will likely be due at the end of 2023. So backing up to where we are today, that gives us just about a year to prepare the report. Staff will provide much of the data for the report, but the board's input is going to be essential in responding to the issues from the last sunset review, as well as identifying future issues that are confronting the board and the industry. In the past, we've appointed a task force to meet with stakeholders and develop a draft of the report to bring back to the full board. If we have more than 2 board members that are interested in being on that task force, I would suggest that we meet as a full board, just having a single agenda item for that particular board meeting, which would be the sunset review, wherever we are in the development of that. So that's where we are, and I would await the board's pleasure on how they want to move forward in drafting that report.
Thank you, Ms. Fenner. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 7. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Do we have any board members who would like to speak to this issue? Ms. Brewer.
I would be interested in being involved in this process. So I suspect there are others who will be too. So it looks like we might want to go with what was suggested by Ms. Fenner to take it up as a full board. That's my comment.
Thank you. Ms. Tugade.
Yes, I was also raising my hand to indicate interest in participating.
Thank you. Ms. Hurt?
I wanted to offer kind of a historical perspective since I think I've been here for a while, and I was going to suggest that we do open this up to the entire board since we have a number of new members. I think it would be a really good learning experience and a conversation, especially as people like myself may be handing over the reins to different people. And I think going through sunset review, you can really understand where the board is and where they're going.
Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion, great idea, and great reasoning. I just want to point out that these meetings will be in addition to the regular board meetings. So just please keep that in mind. But I think that's a great idea for the reasons that you stated to do this as a board. Do we need a motion to move forward in that way as a board?
You do not, because it would just be a meeting of the board. The chair gets to set the agenda for every meeting, and the agenda, my recommendation to the chair would be that meeting be limited to one agenda item, which would be the sunset review report, whatever portion we are in at that point. The meetings, just like these meetings, would be open to the public, so you would get the public input at that point as well. The meetings just for planning, because I know there's a lot of interest by all of the board members on this particular item. What's difficult is the time commitment. I would suggest that each of the meetings be relatively short, maybe 2 or 3 hours at the outset, depending upon where we are, so that it's not such a burden on the board members' time. I think it might be easier for us to carve out a mutually acceptable meeting date in everybody's calendar if we keep the meetings relatively short, and then we can meet as we need to.
Okay, that sounds like a great suggestion. Hearings or Ms. Hurt, is your hand raised again or is it still up? Sorry.
That's the old hand, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised, I will then move on to item 8, item 9. No, I'm sorry, I was correct the first time.
Did you get public comment on Sunset Review? I'm sorry.
I did.
Thank you.
At least that's my recollection, but obviously I'm a little discombobulated at the moment. But my recollection is I did ask for public comment on Sunset Review. So I will move on to agenda item 8, strategic plan. Ms. Finner, may we have an update on the strategic plan?
Yes, ma'am. On page 43, you'll find the updated action plan for the board's strategic goals from our last strategic plan. As always, if any board member would like to see priority given to any item, please let us know. As I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, the world we find ourselves in today is significantly different than the one when we created this particular plan and the action plan. So we do have a tentative date scheduled for an in-person strategic planning session on Tuesday, March 28th, followed by a board meeting the next day on March 29th. As we get closer, we'll confirm those dates. As you heard in the DCA report, the governor's office is giving direction to all of the state agencies as they move forward with strategic planning on things that they would like to see on diversity and inclusion. And so I know that Solid is working hard with the governor's office to identify those changes that they would like to see and put them into our strategic planning process, or the strategic planning process that they use with the boards and bureaus. So that's a little bit of the unknown right now, but everybody's working to meet those dates. If they do not end up working, then I'll reach out and check with board members on their calendars on when we can actually get that going.
Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment before we move to board discussion?
We are now accepting public comment on the matter. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And we have a comment from Protect Your Record Project. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hold on just a second. Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, I was just curious. This is Kimberly Durso, president of Protect Your Record Project. And I hadn't heard that there was public comment for the Sunset Review. And so I'm bringing that up now because I don't believe that you called for public comment.
It was called at the beginning of the item.
Okay.
Did you have a comment on the Sunset Review?
I just had a question. If we wanted to submit input on the CRB regarding Sunset, when is the first date that we would be able to do that? Is it the January 2025 that we show up for that hearing, or would it be before that?
So the board has decided to work on the Sunset Review report for the legislature as a board in whole. So those meetings will be noticed just like this meeting, so that anybody from the public can add input as the board develops their report. But if you want to offer information to the hearings, then the hearings are held at the pleasure of the legislature. The hearings will be held sometime in 2024 so that a bill can be passed, hopefully extending the date of the board's sunset from January 2025.
Okay, so thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. So I'm just misunderstanding. What is the January 2025 date for in front of the legislature?
That's when our board sunsets.
Got it. Okay, so the other hearings will be held before.
Correct.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. So. Any other public comment?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members on, and now we're back to strategic plan, agenda item 8. Okay, thank you so much. That brings us to agenda item 9, future meetings. Yes.
Ms. Hurt and Ms. Brewer have their hands raised.
I apologize. I had gone back. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Ms. Brewer.
Actually, Ms. Hurd was before me, but I know that our executive officer, Fenner, will have made note, but it was suggested that we add the OPES testing suggestion to our agenda for our strategic plan meeting. And I think there was something else, but I'm sorry, I don't have that right at hand and I don't recall. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hurt?
Thank you. Just one really quick item on one of our target dates. It's set for December 2020, and it's investigating real-time captioning standards and assess industry practices for consumer protection. I was wondering if Ms. Fenner, you had any comments or observations. Should we continue, should we change that status to being blank into ongoing or start? Do you have any thoughts around that?
So when we finish a strategic plan, the board sits down with solid staff to distill the broader goals of the board into the actual action plan. So way back in 2019, before the pandemic, we put these dates in thinking that we would be able to accomplish these goals by these dates. They're a little bit randomly picked. I mean, and we took our best guess at it, if you will. I will say, because of the changes of the pandemic, because of the changes with the implementation of firm registration and voice writing, staff absolutely did not have time to get to some of the action items on the strategic plan. So what will happen is when we move into the new strategic planning session, typically they will look at one of the earliest things they do, will look at the old or outdated strategic plan and see if there are any initiatives that are left over, if you will, that were not accomplished, either due to time or resources, or perhaps they're no longer relevant. And at that time, it will be up to the board to decide whether those things that were not accomplished are still important enough to wrap into the new one, or if the industry has changed so much that that's really not an item of priority for our board.
Thank you. I think it's really important that the public, that we acknowledge that and let folks know that it's not blank just because we don't think we can do it or we haven't gotten to it. There's so many reasons why, but it might roll into our future strategic planning concerns and issues. So thank you for putting that on public record.
Thank you. Any other board members with comments before we move to agenda item 9? I am seeing none. Per our usual custom, staff will poll board members offline about their availability for dates. And in fact, I think that's already begun. Are there any public comments on this topic? This is agenda item 9, future meetings.
We are now accepting public comment on future meeting dates. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Do any board members wish to comment on agenda item 9? Seeing none, that concludes the open portion of our meeting today. Again, I want to apologize for the inconvenience and the difficulties with my connectivity issues. The board will now move into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision A1, to conduct the annual evaluation of its executive officer. I want to thank all of you for your participation.
And just to clarify, the board will be adjourning after the closed session?
Yes. Yes, there will not be any, we will not be coming back. The meeting will not be coming back we're done with the public meeting, correct? We just have the closed session in regard to the executive officer evaluation. Is that?
Great, yes. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes.
Yes, sometimes, Robin, the board comes back out to report on any action from that particular item, but you wouldn't need to do that in this case.
Correct.
And I would just let the board know I'll be logging off so that you can have a free and open discussion. Thank you very much for an incredibly efficient meeting.
Yes, thank you.
And also,